Okay, so behavioural modelling is an integral part of NLP. My journey in life, I've always been fascinated with what is the difference that makes the difference, what separates one person from the other person. I've been very fortunate. I've worked with some really top people in sport, in business, and life in general, and I've always been fascinated. I always take the opportunity to find out what makes someone great, that next level. So if I've got a chance to speak to someone on a train, on a plane, just in general, I will quiz them using some of the processes that we're going to talk about shortly. But before we go into that, I've got a scenario for you. Years ago, I was talking to Wyatt Woodsmore. It was in 2005, I think, and we were talking about how he was the Olympic diving team, the USA. He was doing some work with them, and it was during, I think it was 2005 now, and I think for a moment, you're a diver. If you're diving, the platform's about 10 meters high, and this is only about a meter high. It looks pretty high to me. You can stand on the table if you want to, you don't have to, health and safety, but it's pretty damn high. And you've got to make a split decision. Okay, so I'm having this conversation to Wyatt Woodsmore in 2005, who's one of the top NLP trainers. I think he was the first NLP master trainer, but certainly he mentored, I believe, Tony Robbins to a point in the early days. Now, Wyatt Woodsmore was doing an advanced behavioural modelling course for 10 days in the UK, and the person who was facilitating the course, Terry, had asked me to come along, and they asked if they could model me at one point. God knows what they want to get from me, I don't know. But anyway, she asked if I could help coordinate the course and contribute to the program with my expertise, because at the time I obviously was working in highest level sport, and equally I'd had the experience of having NLP for many years too. So it just so happened to be that where the course has been delivered. So it was a great opportunity, and I spoke to Wyatt at the bar one time, as you do. I tend to learn more at the bar than on the courses that you do, one in conversation. But what I found fascinating was when he said to me, from the point of view that he talked about his experience he's experienced in many areas, but he's experienced with the diving team. And I found it really fascinating for me, because as I mentioned before, if you imagine, say, you're going to go for a dive, it's a pretty big platform that you've got to dive in. It's like 10 meters high. And he said to me that the Chinese had modelled Leganis, who was the Olympic champion in diving, I think, in 84 and 88.
I was just thinking about him. He was one that hits everything on the way down.
Precisely. But he still won the gold medal. And the Chinese had modelled him, so he said. I don't know the whole details. I'm only going off what he told me. But I know he worked with the American team and had modelled him. But what they modelled was probably more observational, what he did observationally. Now, from this point of view, you can watch me dive into a pool, or you can watch a top diver dive in the pool observationally, but what do you not get if you do that is the internal process. So my understanding was they did model the internal process, which is instrumental, and equally, if not more important.
Didn't he hit his head and then dive again after that?
I believe so, yeah, I believe so.
He hit his head on the concrete.
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah, and he won again. But cutting a long story short, the moral story is that you've got this split second to make a decision. So I can watch someone physically, what they do, and I can sort of replicate what they do. But what I can't do by doing that is go inside their mind, and that's the important part. Working out their values, their beliefs, the way they strategize it, the way they coordinate the information. The logical levels, and a number of things that we'll talk about, the perceptual position as well of the situation. So for me, it's fascinating, really, concept. Really fascinating, and when Wyatt was saying that, unknown, I think, in that community, the Chinese were doing it. I don't know what they did eventually. I don't know if they did go in and model things cognitively. I don't know. I'm only going off what Wyatt told me. I don't know what ended up happening, but I do know that the Chinese would eventually improve beyond belief, and obviously they were, if memory serves me correct, at one point when they hosted the games. I think they won, certainly. So I don't know what methods they employed going forward. But equally, what I'm trying to get at is, from an external point of view, you can model someone, and also an internal point of view. So, from what I understand, they didn't do the modelling initially internally in one's mind. Now, my understanding is that from a modelling point of view, which we'll go into more detail, as it happens, ironically enough, because I spoke to Wyatt, funnily enough, one time too, at that point, because I knew he'd mentored Tony Robbins, at least in the early years, and I think, I'm going to memory now, that they ran when they ran the US Army pistol project, I'm pretty sure it was called Jedi, but he'd invited Robbins. I think Robbins wrote about that in one of his books, the pistol shooting in the Army. And that was Wyatt who I think invited him to do that. So they would model top shooters to improve their ability. And they would do that, beyond belief. And if you do read one of Robbins' books, I'm pretty sure he credits Wyatt as being influential in his own development. I actually asked Wyatt who did Tony Robbins model. I won't tell you who he told me modeled, but I'll leave that up to you. I don't think that is one of them really, but in my own infinite wisdom, I think that certainly, from my understanding, is that Tony Robbins would model musicians, because that theatrical thing that he does at the event. I believe he may have modelled evangelists too, and also certain therapists, but I'm sure they weren't the only people he modelled, but you can see how that sort of translates to his events too. But that's another story for another day. For me, modelling is about finding what you want from somebody else. That's the important thing. Now, what do you want from that person? Which we'll touch on as we go along. Example, I was training these golf coaches. They came from Ireland to the UK to learn NLP and hypnosis. I'm training them in mental skills, because we know golf is a mental game, much as golf is played in the mind. Because you do a lot of walking in golf, but minimal ball contact. It's mainly like, okay, you're walking around, strategizing, so you've got to get in the right state at the right time in golf. But anyway, we were talking about golf in general, the components of being a successful golfer, and we got to one of the components, putting and then driving off the tee. Not that I'm a professional golfer myself, I'm not a golfer at all, but these skills are transferable. But I know enough to know what they told me to understand the mental process. And we talked about driving, and these were coaches. Okay, so you sort of ping the ball as far as you can on the green. And at the time, the person who was hitting the ball longer than anybody was Tiger Woods. Okay, I don't know Tiger Woods, I've never met Tiger Woods, but I made a suggestion. If there was a way to access Tiger Woods somehow, be it through YouTube, be it through magazines, be it through interviews, be it if they had the contacts, the 5 degrees of separation to speak to him, he'd be great to model. So I said to the guys, if you're looking to model, he's pinging a ball 30, 40 yards more than anybody else. Not now, but back then he was, for sure. And it all went quiet. You could hear a hush. And I'm wondering if I said something wrong. Have I said something wrong? And because I talked about modelling excellence, and I thought, well, if you're going to model someone, he'd probably be the best person to model. And it went like, you could hear a pin drop. And as you hear the pin drop type thing, one of the guys sort of like, he's like this. He goes, I'll tell you at break time. So I go at break time, and he goes, I don't think it's a good idea to model him. I said, why? He's pinging the ball. He's like, 30, 40 yards. He goes, I don't think you get it. I go, I don't understand what you mean. You've lost me. And that was a time when Tiger Woods was having these extramarital affairs, as you do. And he brought it up, as you do. And I don't think that the way he was conducting his life was congruent to their values and beliefs in life in general. I said, dude, I'm not saying to model his sex life or his marital life. You might improve it a bit. You might improve it a bit, as you do. That's me being blunt and brave. I've got a dark sense of humour, as you do. I've got a pretty crude. But the point being, you're modelling what you want from that person. So there's no one perfect in general. So you've got to know what you want to model from someone. Okay? Do you cast the first stone? Do you judge? Whatever. At the end of the day, whoever you model is going to have flaws on some level. But know what you want out of that person. But equally, in their case, if they didn't feel comfortable going down that road, then it's their call. I don't know. But I'm using that as an example that you decide, who you want to model, what you want from that example.
Because presumably, if you took it literally, if you're modelling a big person down to the T, then you'd be losing sight of self.
Yeah, I mean that's a good point, and I think we're going to make that point as we go along. That you want to identify the skill or capability or behaviour from that person. So, for example, you look at, say, Bill Clinton. He's a great communicator. Whichever way anyone says, he is a great communicator. And he would find a way, Bill Clinton, to give you his undivided attention. Okay, and that was said by a lot of people. Okay, so that would be what you might want to model. So you chunk it down. So it might be, okay, Obama's a great public speaker. I might not agree with his public policies at the time, or I might agree, yes, each to their own, but equally you can't take away the fact that he is a great speaker.
A good example, because I was this conversation, would be Jeremy Corbyn. He's shit in the House of Commons.
Yeah.
He's no good in the House of Commons at problems question time, but he's really good on the campaign.
Yeah, for sure. And you might want to write to him and suggest, write a letter. You're crap at the Commons, but
he's not good.
Yeah, I mean,
this is why you need to be specific and have a well-formed outcome. You need to say, okay,
yes.
What is it exactly?
Yeah, for sure. Because that could be the difference that makes the difference, for sure. Exactly, because it could be.
Is it command the audience, or is it confident in what they're saying?
And that could be, and that's a great point. And I think that sort of reminds me of I've mentioned before, the tale of two managers. I don't know any of these guys personally, so I can't comment on in too much detail. But in football management, I mentioned when we did the logical levels, you got, say, the football manager's one who's European Footballer of the Year twice. You've got all the qualifications, all the credentials, loads of charisma. But at the interview, when I was watching on TV, England got beat to Germany last game at Wembley. He goes, "I'm not cut out for this." Okay, so his beliefs, his identity, maybe even his values, his evaluation of doing that job, football management, Kevin Keegan, doesn't support the excellence. But equally, the other guy who's never been a professional footballer, when he gets unravelled at the press conference for Chelsea for the first time, I'm the special one. So that's a belief. Now you can go and call yourself special ones if you want to, but one thing's for sure, that's going to impact behind the behaviours and belief. So it's really important you model people's values and beliefs in that context. Now I don't know Mourinho or Keegan personally, but what I do know is that certainly Mourinho has been one of the most successful, love him or hate him, managers of this generation. Regardless of who's on top now, he has won a lot of stuff, and considering he was a pro footballer, he did pretty damn well. So it could have been that belief. Sometimes it's millimetres. There's a fine line between you and the excellence. It might be one ingredient. It could be minimal, okay? It might not be a great thing. It might be something, you tweak along the way. My philosophy in life, whilst I'm fascinated by excellence, and I've been very fortunate of being exposed to a lot of excellence in business, in sport. I've seen it close hand for many, many years and still do now. Some great therapists, some great coaches, some great athletes, some great people. I put this into effect. So for me, in my journey in NLP world, experientially, I spend a lot of my time modelling and putting these techniques into practice. Okay, I didn't concern myself too much about how I'm going to articulate myself to the audience, how I'm going to come across, how I'm going to put a show on. Purely on the basis is how can I help people go where they want to go, presenting in sports, but also me improve. So for me, if I'm going to write a book, I model writers. The music stuff I do, the iTunes, I model musician. So a lot of things I've done, coaching, I would model good coaches, model big therapists, learn. I didn't get to meet Ericsson. Obviously, he passed away before I came into the party, but I certainly spent time with people who sort of trained under him and still do now, definitely, and ask them modelling questions. When I was in Arizona the other year at the masterclass with Jeff, I was asking him questions. He caught me out. He goes, "You're asking modelling questions." I said, "That's right, because you're one of the top, and I want to be the best I can be. So I'm going to ask you questions that I think I can get and improve." So the useful way to do things, we'll go in more detail, but not to say to be in awe of anybody. I truthfully have never been in awe of anybody in all my life. Since very young, even as a young person making my way in the world, I admire people, but I don't feel any awe around anyone. The reason being, I know there's things I can do that you can't do, and vice versa. So I don't have any awe, regardless of who it is or what situation it is. It's something to be learned. I know people learn from me, and I know that I can learn from people. So I think that it's useful to have that sort of frame for me if you're going to sort of do that. But there's a difference that makes a difference, and you see it in sport all the time. The top athlete is at the Olympic game, and the one who's just a percent underneath that is watching it on TV. There's not always a great deal of difference. There's not always as much difference as you think. One selling point, if you're going to model someone, is that they're going to improve as a result of you modeling them, because it becomes more conscious awareness. So you email someone to model them, you could say, well, the selling point is that you're going to improve what you do if I do this project with you, because it's going to be more consciously aware. If you're more aware on the radar of what you do, you can do more of it and do it better. That said and done, something just come to mind now. I can't remember who was telling me now. I stand corrected. Someone can email me if it's not the case. But I believe that when Bandler and Greener were modelling Satya, they'd modelled one of her sessions, and they showed it back to her. And the next session she did, it messed up her next session. So there you go. But I think possibly that might have been down to context.
She's become too conscious.
Possibly, definitely. So if you model a top footballer who's making £300 million a week, and he's scoring 20 goals, 100 goals a season, I'm not scoring goals no more. Take out a big insurance policy. I'm going to sue you, as you do. No, but I think that's within reason. We don't know completely, but that's sort of. I think the long and short of it is that I think it's great in the sense that if you're more consciously aware, you can improve. I think it really helps you in terms of, and think about things you're good at doing, because the things and beliefs are so under the radar as well. They're so unconscious belief systems as well. So bear that in mind. And think about some things you're really, really good at doing. You just do it. Even like driving a car, you don't think how you drive a car. You do. You just get in there and you do the car. And the ways of modelling is through observation, watching the person, like for example, replicating it. And you can do like business. It could be a technique, a skill in sport, in business, in life in general, behaviour. The internal process as well, what they believe, their values, the strategies, the meta program, the neurological levels, time frames, perceptual positions. But we'll go into more detail. We'll certainly go into a lot more detail. We do the process today and go into more detail. I do it at organisation level, individual level. Okay, I'll give you an example. When I started working for a team in League 2, in the United Kingdom and the UK, it was in 2003. 2003 I started working with them at the youth level, and they were going to disband the youth team for one reason or the other, and then they kept it open, and they weren't producing that many players at the time. They were going to dismember it and let it go. And when I got the job to work there in conditioning and performance role, what I did is I started modelling other organisations. So I would model some of the biggest clubs in the world, clubs that were similar size, similar revenue, similar things. And the goal for me was sort of, from an organisational point of view, get the best we could get out of it. Now, we didn't have the budget of the best team of the biggest team in the world. We didn't have their budget. But what I felt we could do is work with what we had. So I would model teams of the same level were producing players. I would model some of the biggest teams. I would model players individually. And what I did is I decided, okay, what we could do for the young players coming through, the first step was to do something that we could do. And I focused on the physical fitness. Okay? So I got stats. I got stats from some of the biggest clubs in the world and some of the most best players in the world, what they were physically, what they could run in 12 minutes, what they could do in the belief test, how fast they could run in 20 metres, what they could do fitness-wise. And I did fitness testing. And I said to the players, what are our aspirations to be to physically get to that level? Because then it's a game of tactic and technical. But if you don't get there, then how are we going to challenge? So that was the goal. And what I would do is I'd go, and you can see it, there was newspapers wrote about it, certainly the local press did. I'd go to like Bolton University and say to them, you know, guys, can you do fitness testing for us? Because we couldn't afford, obviously, to do the finance to do the testing. I'd go to Salford Uni. Can you do game analysis and break the game down so we can study it? So I would form partnerships with universities. And I think, to my knowledge, is when the first time it had ever been done. And the reason I did that is within the budget to pay for that, but university students want the experience. So I would sort of like, you know, to do all that psychological profiling, and I would use that as a blueprint. Then I would go cognitive, internal, and share information with the players. You know, what, from a technical point of view, improving their technical components of the game, kicking a ball, heading a ball, scoring goals, defending, technical components of the game. I'd show them videos of players and give them opportunities to see live games of players at the highest level, watch them. I do stuff like deep trance identification with them, step into their shoes, like new behavior generator, but deep trance identification, step into their shoes, observational, but then I go internal too. And I sort of categorise players they could relate to. So if a player was, for example, small in stature, I might say to the player, model someone who's also small in stature from a height point of view, the beliefs they've got, the values they've got. Because at the time, a lot of recruitment was done on players that were certain height and speed and athleticism. So I'd use that, strategies, what strategies they run to do the technique. So I'd go deep. And it was, you know, we really transformed. And we won our youth league. We won from being dismembered to winning it. We'd also achieved very high recognition in education program, because education is really important to me. And equally, I think it's really important to them, because a lot of them will get released. That's just the fact of life. Only so many places can make it. So education was big. So we were really punching above our education-wise too, because they got to do like a BTEC at the time. And basically, for me, we were producing players. And you can go out there, it's out public domain. The players we were producing, for the budget we had, the resources we had, was pretty impressive, to be fair. But for me, it was basically, okay, can we form partnerships where we couldn't afford the resources? Observational learning, because we learn for observation as well. Observational learning is really, really big. Look at the Bandera experiments in the 60s, where they took the Bobo doll experiments, where they'd sort of show adults behaving passively, aggressively with dolls and nothing at all, and the young people were influenced by what they saw. And you know, if you see a parent growing up jump if they see a spider 6 foot, that might be passed on to you, that fear. So observational learning is quite useful too from that point of view. So, you know, going back into football for me, with Berwick was at time, and thereafter sort of do more consultancy roles, it was about, okay, how can we punch above our weight, so to speak, and that was a big thing for me. So, you know, the ways of modelling excellence I mentioned before: observation, watching what the person does, going to be a presenter, an interview, a teacher, watch what they do really well, replicate it, step into what they do. And we'll do a process shortly for you to practice. We'll do a process shortly. Discover the internal process of a person during the execution of the skill. So examples of values and beliefs. So during the execution. So for example, if they're a cricket player, okay, the ball. So when I was looking at a cricket player one time, he said to me he'd get to 50 runs for whatever reason, but then his wicket would go. Now bearing in mind that the ball's coming in about 90 miles an hour, and you've got to make a split decision. Okay, so I actually analysed his own performance rather than anybody else, what he did up until he got to that point, and we did another strategy, and that he sent me an email. It made a massive difference to him. He'd kicked on to score bigger runs. We found a strategy for him, so when he got to 50, okay, and tended to get out, what he would do after that is go on to score more. But equally, I've done the process with people presenting who had no presentation skills before. As a presenter, a Toastmaster speaker. I model the best speakers all the time to find out what they do. It's really, really useful. Behaviour, if you're calm and composed in certain situations or confident in situations, that can be useful too. So you can look at the value that leads a person. The internal processes you can use, including the internal mental approach you can use. So you can use the people's strategies, and you can model my writing if you want to. So the person's strategies, their meta programs, okay, their neurological levels. So neuro levels, we will go into these in more detail. Their time frames, their perceptual positions, their perspectives on things, and we will go into these in more detail after lunch, which is quite useful to do. Discovering physiology and behavioural patterns in their body language, eye-accessing cues, gestures and predicates. Okay, we covered our eye-accessing cues, physiological patterns, behavioural patterns, so that can be quite useful too. So I think the observational aspect will take you so far. At some point, it's going to be internal, the mindset that is going to have a big impact. I mentioned before about Wyatt telling me at the bar about the Chinese modelling the observational part, the external part, and it's going to take you so far. Because you think about it, you're standing on a 10-foot board and the pressure, and you've got to make a split decision. A lot of it's going to, what's in here as well is going to play a big part. So both internal and external are important. There's no two ways about that. They're both. Modelling in NLP is known as a replication of human excellence. It really is the foundation of NLP. Modelling is the foundation. It's how NLP started. The story, satire, Pearls, Erickson, being modelled as the greatest, arguably the greatest therapist of that generation, if not all time, in that respect. We're getting results. Because you're going to do something, you're going to go and ask someone who's doing what you want to do. So excellence is a good place to start. So my understanding is, Van and Grid set out to create a method to discover how someone does excellence. And could you replicate that and teach others? I suppose the argument is that how much can you teach somebody else? The desire's got to be, you've got to want to do it, improve. How much can you improve? Well, there are other factors too to take in consideration. Okay, there's other factors too that one must take in consideration, but we can be the best we can be. We can be the best we can be. I mean, how someone achieves excellence is quite subjective too. It's not accelerated learning, but it's subjective to many, many factors. It could be biological. So you might have someone who is biologically, some people say there's no such thing as, genetic, but equally in saying that we know in sprinting, in swimming, from a... Precisely. Precisely. But that's not to say that you can't be the best you can be, and equally, who knows what's possible? And we see people defy the odds all the time. So who knows how far you'll go? I think as a coach, if you don't believe the person can do something, you're probably better off not taking the person on.
Bannister in the 4-minute mile.
Yeah, they said it wasn't possible, yeah.
And then as soon as he did it, didn't loads of people do it really quickly afterwards.
They did, yeah. Now, yeah. I mean, Bannister passed away actually a couple of days ago. But you're right. It says scientifically you couldn't do it. But not long after he did it, the belief barrier came down, and now college people can do it now, pretty much. It's not, it's not such a big feat now. But the point being, who knows what's possible? But on the other side of things, if someone's never if the guy, the gentleman, the wonderful gentleman who's a big Man City fan next door, he's in his 70s now, says to me, I want to be the striker for Man City. Can you coach me? Can you model someone from City? I would probably say that's one for one of you guys to take on. I don't want to rain his parade, but generally speaking, if I like to think and say to you, I believe, anything's possible and lots of stuff, but equally saying that maybe that's my limitation. But if you don't have that limitation, you want to take someone's money and coach them to do that, then that's your call. All I'm saying is that, just be true to yourself. That's the key to all of it. But I've known from my experience, I've worked with people who defied the odds. There's plenty of people out there that I've worked with who sort of punched well above their weight. When you plan for your modelling project, these are some really important things to ask yourself. Okay, Identify a skill or capability that you want to learn. Okay, think of a skill or capability. These are some really key questions you want to ask yourself. A skill or capability that you want to learn. Okay. And how will it make a difference?
Well, of course, because you might be wanting to do something that's going to impact on someone else's life unfairly.
Yeah, for sure. How will it make a difference to you from where you are, bridging the gap? Where are you now in the context of that skill? So maybe 1 out of 10, where would you say you are, where you want to be? Okay, so confident presenting could be 5, want to get to 9. Or an execution of skill in that presentation, or teaching or transmission. Now, what difference will this make towards you achieving your outcome? The goal you have. If you learn the skill, will you get a different job, a promotion? Will you win a medal? Will you be able to score more runs? And also, and you can do this if you're comfortable closing your eyes, what will you see, hear and feel when you've got the skill? Okay, so just take a moment to really, what will you see, hear and feel when you've got the skill? What will others see, hear and feel as a result of you modelling the skill? And what will you see, hear and feel as a result of modelling the skill and teaching it to others? Okay, so sort of taking that time when you're planning for it, imagine having it, learning it. So you've learned a sports skill, a business skill, a life skill, whatever it is. And that could be in teaching, it could be in presenting, it could be interviews, it could be sports, whatever it is that you want to improve. It could be gardening, baking, who knows? Who is your exemplar? Who will you model? Or list of people? What do you want to learn from them? I mentioned earlier about what you want from that person is key. Okay? What do you want to learn from that person? And chunk it down. Chunk it down to a manageable level. Chunk the process down. So, for example, you might want to be or learn a number of components to be a better presenter. Chunk it down to one component to begin with that's manageable, so you're not cognitively overloading yourself. Okay, so you might model someone physiologically who presents, but also their internal process, but be very specific on what you want from that person. Is it more confidence presenting? Is it a certain ability they've got, influence presenting, or as a teacher to be able to present? I believe for me, we don't do enough of it in organisation. We spend too much time analysing poor performance and good performance. So one thing I did when I started working in care home, some of the best teachers, I would model them and learn what they did. There was one teacher who was so phenomenal. She was so elegant with the young people. She was so elegant with the young people. She just had such a good connection with them. And I actually sat down one time and said, can I model you? Not in those words, but can I learn from you? And I asked the questions that we're going to go through, and I went through some of these processes we're going to go through to learn what she did. Because she would work with some of the most difficult, most challenging behaviours, and she was such a calming influence. She was so elegant. So I want to model her ability to connect and engage the young people in learning. And I sort of sat down with her and went through that, and I was convinced from seeing her. And you've got to wonder yourself, what would you see, hear and feel that convinced you the model has the capability you want to model? Now, what do you see, hear and feel? And what I saw was just her elegance, the way she would communicate calmly, in a really nice tone. Even if there was aggression being transmitted back, she would still remain calm. and almost de-escalate the aggression and build a connection. So, you know, you might want to model someone's humour in certain situations. You don't want to model my humour, it won't get you very far. But equally, you know, you might want to model someone's specific criteria. So, you know, and I think in organisations we should spend more time modelling people in our organisation. Good salespeople, good teachers, great communicators. Get the best out of your staff. If you model your staff, you can get the best out of it. And think about what has the biggest impact on your performance. What has the biggest impact from an organisational point of view on performance and the least impact? Okay? Modelling changes for me the emphasis on analysing what's wrong and also what's working well. Because I truly believe, in my opinion, and I remember one time working and doing NLP training to a football club in the United Kingdom in the Premier League, and they told me what they would do is on a Monday morning go for a video and show the players all the things they did wrong in the game. And they would put a video in the bus, in the coach, of all the good things the other players did. Amazing, isn't it? Really was amazing how they would do that. And I think, you know what, isn't it fascinating to think, you know, at what point do you model what they do well? Imagine someone replaying to you at work all the things you did wrong during the week.
So when you were saying then, Jimmy, about modelling the staff, you mean it in the respect of gaining a better understanding?
You could do a parallel, great question, you can do a parallel. So if you said to me you want to improve a component or capability, behaviour, then I could find an example for you, and we could do a parallel between you and them, observationally and cognitively. But equally, if we've got a great member of staff who's excelling, then we could model them too. We could model out what we do really, really well as well. So for me, showing someone a video of all the things they're doing wrong during a game, or if you did that in a work environment, it's not really going to do anyone any good from the context that, okay, what can we do better? So they're doing a lot of things good. They're putting a video on the coach and showing them what other players did really well they're going to play up against. And you wonder why they're nearly bottom of the league. I'm not blowing my own trumpet, but when I finished delivering training to them, they're not finishing in the top 6.
In fact, that's almost like a double negative.
Yeah. Well, precisely, yeah.
All the stuff they've done wrong, and you're going, look, these guys are doing it right. What the fuck is wrong with you, basically?
Well, so along them lines, you think so. So the point being is that, okay, can we analyse good performance? And we do really, really well. So for me, you know, it's another story for another day, but you know, you can do analyse good performance, install new strategies, and you can install a new strategy with someone. If it's not working, then do something different. And it helps you to understand what intervention techniques lead the person to an outcome. So once you've modelled someone, then you can start understanding what interventions you're going to use to help them go forward, as well as, okay, so we're sort of mindful of lunch, we can come back to it after lunch, but what you want to do to begin with, the first step, the overview, is to find someone whose behaviour is worth modelling. Someone who's really excellent at what they do. Okay? Find their beliefs and values. You know, watch what they do. Elicit their beliefs and values, their strategy, their physiology. Install it in yourself if you choose to. Install it in others if you choose to. Design a training, train others, and train trainers. The key steps really are, for me, elicitation, coding, utilisation, and propagation. Okay, they're key steps. Identifying the skill you want and who you want is important. Okay, observe the external behaviour and what they're doing, and also elicit patterns internally that constitute excellence. That is imperative to do that. Know your outcome, what you want. So how will you know? Okay, imagine having the outcome. What will you see, hear, and feel? Remember, when you've got the outcome, when you're doing what you want to do, what will others see, hear, and feel? What will people you teach see, hear, and feel? But really, really focus. When you're observing external behaviour, what's really important is watch the person. Okay, so if they're a cricket player, you know, watch them, watch their body language. If they're a speaker, then watch how they speak, how they move around the stage. If they're a musician, how they you know, play the guitar. What it is that you want to do and learn, watch their body language, what rep systems they're in. Okay, you can do this by listening to their predicates too. Their predicates, how they communicate, using sensory language. Watch the eye movements, deep trance identification. Now, this is really, really good. Some people call deep trance identification true modelling. So, yeah, mindful of lunch, but we'll do the process. And one of the best experiences I've had, truth be told, of deep trance identification was on a band, and I don't want to advertise to other people's. I'm not on commission, but when I went to a band and McKenna weekend, deep trance identification, they did it masterfully. Loved it. Deep trance identification. Yeah. So and years ago, truth be told, what I would do is imagine stepping in the shoes of certain coaches and being them, and taking learnings away. So I would imagine, okay, I'm Milton Erickson for a session, and I'd listen to his audios. I'd speak to people who'd worked, who'd learnt under him, and really, really get a feel. Obviously, physiologically, he had polio and so on and so forth, but take what I need out of it. And I would look at that. I was quite fortunate in sport to have been involved with some pretty big coaches who were great, and I'd sort of imagine if I had to take a session for them, what it would be like. Until eventually I would end up having to take the session with some of the people that mentored me. That's the irony. So I would do that, and have a think, and you can, very briefly, because we've got lunch coming up, but imagine someone who just thinks that you do really, really well. And as you imagine that person, imagine seeing him on the screen. And as you see that person on the screen, notice the colours, the sounds, the feelings, how they stand, how they walk, how they talk, what they do, how they do the skill you want to do. And as you do that, imagine stepping in. And as you step in, imagine some of their values and beliefs, their meta programs, their perception. I know, obviously, you're only going to be able to take so much by doing this, but we know mind-body link. So equally as well as doing that, we'll go into that in more detail after break, and you get a lot out of it. For me, the back end of that, we're also going to the values and beliefs. We cover neurological levels, Robert's neurological levels. That's quite useful. Meta programs as well, perceptual positions, strategies to run those capabilities. They're all useful things to do. And you practice it. Have a go at it. Work on it. The idiosyncratic difference makes a difference. It's like a baby. A baby's not afraid to make a mistake. Children aren't afraid of making mistakes, and it's your own journey. Go back to the know-nothing state, in the sense that wipe your mind clear in that area, and start a clean slate. And think, okay, when you first learn to drive a car, it's conscious incompetence. You drive, you stall, then it's conscious competence. You're thinking consciously, okay? Then it becomes unconscious incompetence. Every now and again you stall, you miss a turn off, and then it's unconscious competence. But when you think about it from this point of view, a skill that you're presenting, and things are going so fast in the presentation, so much things going through your mind, you've got an interview, questions are being fired at you, the limbic system. In a game, so the ball's coming down 90 miles an hour, okay? So conscious competence, you're thinking. Conscious incompetence, the conscious competence, you're thinking what to do, this is your legs. If the ball's coming down 90 miles an hour, you've hardly got the time to think, well, I've got to keep my legs in this position. I've got, unconscious incompetence, unconscious competence, where you automatically, because you've got like 0.1 of a second to make a decision. You're diving at the ball, or the ball's flying down. To get in line and do your positioning. So, and that goes for a lot of things in life. Okay, so you could ask the person, if I had to step in for you, show me what to do. How do you start? How do you stop? How do you do it? All these questions are in the manual, by the way. We'll go through them. Listen to their rep systems internally, some modalities. How do you know when to move into the next step? The context.
Sorry, the question is in here, did you say,
Yeah, all in the manual. Yeah, for sure. These questions are all in the manual. And so there's a list of questions you can ask to do that. You've got the logical levels, the meta programs, the strategy questions, the self-vision questions. So they're all there. But bearing in mind that the baby's not afraid to be wrong, and think about it when you cast your mind back to on page. Because I don't have a manual at hand. I think it's page 176 along them lines, and some other stuff I've added too. I can send you separately as well. So yeah.
So it's not in this manual.
No, not that one. Not that one. But I will go through it with you after lunch. Most of them are in that manual I'll give you there, but I've added some additional things that you can use too, in my experience, in my journey. So you've got those questions there you can utilise, but as well as that, I've got some other stuff you can use, having done it a lot of times, which is quite useful. But find someone you admire enough to get what you want out of them. There's a number of approaches you can use. Okay, people's strategies, the sequence they do things. From a strategy point of view, think meta-model questions. Okay, when you're eliciting the strategy, we'll look at meta-model questions. How, what, chunk down. Okay, getting ideas about how someone does something, ask questions based on Robert Dilts' logical levels. Okay, using deep trans-identification is quite useful too. Okay, watching observationally, stepping in for them. Modelling is the heart of NLP. All techniques in NLP application originally came from modelling people who were naturally good at what they did. Okay, that's the foundation of NLP. That's what I love about NLP. I really do. I think it's amazing in that respect. No model is perfect, by the way. No model is panacea, and you take what you will out of any model. But I think the concept of finding people who are where you want to be in itself is amazing. And how does the performer behave, do what they do, what they do different to people that are less successful than them? What is the difference that makes a difference? Phenomenal. And you can ask parallel questions between you and the exemplar. It's a natural process, modelling. It's a natural process, a beautiful process. As toddlers and children, you unconsciously learn to be expert modellers. Okay, learning many complex skills. As adults, we apply the same skills in a conscious way by asking key questions. Okay, as a toddler, you learn many things. Okay, and you could ask someone, for example, if understanding for you, what would I have to do, behave, feel, and think? And if I don't have the time to go through all these questions, the whole big modelling project, if I get excellence, if I'm on a plane to America, if I'm on a train in Europe, if I'm on a whatever, anywhere in the world, I see someone who's got excellence anywhere near me, one of the questions I'll ask them about a component I want to learn, if I only got a short time, if I understand it for you, what would I have to do, think, behave, to feel, to be you, to stand in for you, to do that component? And it kind of throws them out, and I think that's the, and you'll see, and whenever I speak at expos, and there's some other great speakers, some really, well-known speakers, I will ask them. If I'm at an expo and I see Sir Clive Woolbrook speaking, then I'm just going to go up to him just to shake his hand and get, a selfie. I'm going to go up to him and ask him this question, and I will do. Other great coaches, I'll go up there and, and not that I'm in awe of him, and, I'd like to think I've done a few things myself, but you can always learn. So I'll see him and I'll speak to him. If I see if I'm speaking at a conference and I see Hilary Devey speaking, then after she's finished speaking, I'll go up to her and say, is there something I want to learn from her? I'll ask her. And that could make me better at what I do.
So do you find it really well received when you do that? People,
well, probably people know now. People probably know what they're going to get. Some people who know about it, I'll say, that's the modelling question. I'll catch on like Jeff did.
Yeah.
But equally, what can they say? I'm not asking out on a day. That could be an issue.
No, because I can imagine it's quite a flattering question, but I can also imagine that it's a question that a lot of people are not used to being asked.
Precisely.
And I just wondered sort of what your general what you tend to get back on people initially when
no, I don't always, sometimes sometimes people they feel flattered. I think most people feel flattered. And I think most people who are excellent at what they do are okay to share. If someone asked me that question, I'd throw them off in a tangent. Tell them the opposite.
Ask them another question.
Do the opposite of me and you'll be fine. But equally, you know what, I think most people are flattered to think, you know, but in saying that there are people that are guarded. If they work in the same industry as you, in sport, if they're one of your rivals, and they're hardly going to say, you know what, but he's saying that I think that there is a camaraderie. I mean, we are all in the same family in some respect, we're all trying to improve. So I would say, in my opinion, the people I've asked, when I go to some of the football conferences and I speak to other coaches, we go for dinner and they're very forthcoming, even though you know, they might consult a different team or for a different team that I work for. Most of the time, yeah, they're fine, because they know we can all learn from each other. That's how we grow. You back yourself. So, you know, top coaches, therapists, when I speak at the conferences, the events like the Expo, the NLP conferences, the hypnotherapy conferences, I see people who I've, you know, from being 17, 18, learnt from their material. I'll go up to them and say, you know, can I have 5 minutes? They know what I'm doing. I'm not asking for, like, you know, a whole, it could be just a few questions that make a difference to me. The questions I'll ask are the ones I think that are going to give me what I might need. I don't always get what I need, but equally in saying that, I find a way to cherry pick. So my philosophy is, I'll stand on the shoulders of giants, excellence, and I'll just cherry pick what's right for me and form my own ability, be the best I can be. That's always been my goal. But, you know, it's a bit different to conventional learning. But when you first learn to talk and walk as a child, you mumbled to a point. It all starts with finding people worth modelling. It can be time consuming, so make sure you're passionate about that, it's worth your while. You know, when you're sort of deconstructing the model, and micro muscles, you know, the beliefs, the values, relevant meta programs, what feedback to look for. Use the meta model to denormalize unclear areas and list unconscious competence of the examiner. Because the thing is, they do it so, the belief is going to be so deep, the confidence is going to be so deep in the unconscious mind, they're probably not even aware of it themselves. So the logical levels, the meta programs, the phases being, you listen to the process, what the model does, their behavior, physiology, why they do it, supporting beliefs and assumptions, how, internal thinking strategies, what you get from direct observations, and explore and ask questions. Streamline it. Take out what you will. There's 1,000 solutions, not just one solution. When you're streamlining it, there's various ways to get from A to B. Take out elements from the model's behavior to see what makes the difference. Refine the model, design it, and then teach it. Okay. I'm sort of mindful of lunch, and for me, you know, certainly from the point of view of being in coaching and therapy, I do a lot of modalities. I've studied several modalities, probably more than anyone, really, in one respect. Well, as much as I'd like to think, over the space of 20-something years, you're modelling what you think works. Okay, you speak to people, what works for them. There's no one size fits all. And, you know, for me, coaching and therapy, one of the things I sort of take a lot of, when Erickson said one time, I didn't meet Erickson, and I would have loved to have met him, but obviously he passed away when, by the time I came into the party. But having spent time with people who trained under him and took on his legacy, specifically in Arizona, when he sort of talks about designing a therapy for each individual, that's powerful stuff. You know, and his beliefs about the client has all the resources they need. His beliefs about you as the therapist making the adjustments. You know, and some of the stuff that you learn, you take away what you will, is powerful stuff. You know, really, really powerful stuff, I think, in my opinion, and I think that you cherry pick from people. You might have information like that. Sometimes I'll model someone, I've got a lot of information. And it might be not that information, just one thing. One thing makes that difference. And that can bridge the gap from me being here to there, or anybody else for that matter. You know, it's a very powerful process. It really is a powerful process, and it might be worth starting within. Model things that you do really well. Analyze things that you do really well. Some people who come on board courses I teach, they say they've never been told that. Throughout their whole life, they're just analysing they don't do well. You go for an academic system that you get 5 out of 10, you focus on the 5 you got wrong, not 5 you got right. For many years, you go to university, into colleges, into organisations, and you spend so much time analysing negative performance. Let's start analysing what you do well, and have faith that if you do that well, you can do other things well too. And have faith that if someone else can do something, then so can you.
That can presumably be a good tool to use with confidence building.
For sure, because there's confidence. And if you said to me, could you fly a plane on Monday to America, I'd say no. Because I'm not a competent pilot. If I wanted to be a pilot, I'm sure I could achieve it if I had the time, energy, inclination, but at the moment I'm not. But if you ask me to do a presentation on things that I'm competent in doing, yes, for sure. But most people have got the competence. They lack the confidence, like the story behind the two managers. It's not about the competence, it's about their BS, belief system. And amongst many other things. And you know, and one person can do one thing in one situation, something different. So sometimes we focus too much on the outcome and the process, where we talked earlier about the pressure we put ourselves under. So sometimes we focus too much on I've got to score that goal to win the final, rather than the technique. Sometimes we focus too much on the outcome of the presentation. If I get the interview, the job, I'm going to end up in a bad situation rather than go through the process itself. So yeah, for sure, it's really, really powerful stuff. Really powerful stuff. And all any of us can do, is really be the best we can be. Okay, I started off on a goal years ago to be the very best I could be in my profession. To be the best. Where that would take me is anybody's guess, and that still is now. That's why I'm a lifelong learner. I'm always learning new stuff. I'm always studying, always learning, because you never have a finished article, in my opinion, in my belief. You can always learn. If you dine on yesterday, it's not a good thing. You'll go hungry. You know, you're always learning new stuff. You always, and I'm happy to make mistakes. It's okay. It's okay to make mistakes. And as a child, I was happy to make a mistake because I knew it wasn't, you know, don't make too many P45 and make sure the mistakes you make aren't putting anyone in danger yourself. But generally speaking, so you stand up and do a talk and it doesn't go the way you want it to go. The interview doesn't go the way you want it to go. You know, you take up a sport and it doesn't, you know, you learn from it. You improve. You widen your radar. If you told me at day one when I first started learning this stuff, as a 17, 18-year-old, would I be doing what I've done now? I wouldn't have thought so, but you widen the radar. The radar sort of gets bigger as you go along. But you know, some people, they learn a course years ago, and I used to say when I used to deliver some training to staff in care homes, I used to deliver some components of CBT to training in care homes, like the teachers and so on and so forth. I used to say to them, you know what? Somebody used to say, well, why do I have to do the refresher? As well as the education, I'd also deliver some of the training, some components in it. And I was like, well, you know what? You can do a degree 30 years ago, but if you've done nothing else, that's all you know. You've not got anywhere. And I'm not saying academia is all the be-all end-all. Learning of people is powerful stuff. Learning of excellence is, if nothing else, it's accelerated learning. Because you might have time. I knew that I didn't have, in the one lifetime we have, I made an estimation that I wouldn't be able to learn all the things I want to learn and do all the things I want to do if I had to go for a conventional way. I had to find a way to learn things fast and get to a level fast, to utilise it. Otherwise you could be here for a million years trying to learn different things. So this was a way to get what you needed out of it, any concept. So for me, some of the biggest influence I've had in my therapeutic movement and teaching was the arts. Ironically, wasn't sitting in a classroom, was learning from people who are masters at being in the now. You know, yoga teachers, kindergarten teachers, martial artists, drama teachers, actors, musicians, sports people. Modelling them, I'd got so much more out of modelling them than I got out of any lecturer, any teacher, any university course. That's not dismissing what I learned and have learned and am learning at universities. I still learn to this day, but from a practicality. There's not words that change people, it's experiences that change people. So from my point of view, you know, sitting with someone for an hour, who is excellent, is priceless. It really is. And having access to somebody who, even for a moment, even 5 minutes, speaking to someone who's won a World Cup, who's won a medal, who's been a great presenter, or still is a great presenter, it is priceless. Finding a few questions out there and taking what you need going forward. So I'm mindful that I'll be eating to your lunch again. So we're going to break for lunch, and after we've broken for lunch, we'll sort of go through some of the concepts in more detail and go from there. Brilliant.